Hello, I'm Margot Van Horn, and I'm with a group of artists that have been painting together for, at least 10 years, and they do mostly portraits, and they meet once a week. And we'll start out over here with Frank, and he will introduce himself and talk a little bit about his work. You're up, Frank.
Okay, thanks, Margot. I'm Frank Doolin. I'm a retired ceramic engineer, and I've been painting since about 1987. I started painting as a child with my father, who was an artist, and then when I finished my high school, I went to college and took engineering. So it was in '87 that I really started seriously painting after my engineering career. I have a desire to paint the entire figure. I feel that the full figure in a portrait tells more about the person. I'm also interested in gesture. The gesture tells a lot about the person, as well as it gives a casual look, unlike the look of the old portraits of presidents and CEOs that were very stiff. The stance gave you the feeling that they were very important people that you should hold in high esteem. Today, I think we have a much more casual attitude toward the figure. Typical example is Steve Jobs, the deceased president of Apple Corporation, who is always portrayed in a very casual manner. And I feel that this is the today's look. So I always try to get a gesture in the figure and clothing that is typical of today's people. Anyway, I have an example here of a painting of one of my paintings. It's a watercolor. I start with a pencil drawing and then move on to painting in color. And I try to incorporate the gestural look, and this is also an old gown, a very old lace gown, and an old rocker that is a sort of a throwback in time. So it's just the sort of typical thing that I do. And in back of me, I have a number of paintings that illustrate what I mean by the gestural look and the full figure. I'm also interested in hands, because I feel that hands tell a lot about a person and a lot about their attitude. So I always try to incorporate hands.
Who has influenced you a little bit? I see a little bit of Andrew Wyeth kind of in there, and some feeling of that type. Who are your artists that you admire?
Oh, definitely Andrew Wyeth.
Okay.
Yeah. Andrew Wyeth was especially of interest to me because he would see a painting as a pattern, and I'm trying more and more to have my paintings appear as patterns. And so I mean a pattern of values, not necessarily color. If you notice that a lot of Wyeth's landscapes, although they're in color, they're almost grays, blacks, and very dark greens. And so his color was very limited. And if you look at his painting as a pattern, it's a very interesting pattern. So Wyeth is definitely one of my,
Okay, well, that's, I
mentors.
can see that.
yeah.
And if you were to give any advice to young artists starting out, what would that be?
Just draw and paint as much as possible. Paint, paint, paint. I think one of the reasons that we get together as artists is because we need the practice. It's like practicing the piano. The only way you're going to get better is to keep practicing. The portrait group seems to be attracted, to me, it seems to be attracted by the challenge of attempting to get a likeness. But getting a likeness is prime, I think, for all of the people in the group. And that's what draws us together as artists. But then telling a story in the total picture is probably the next most important goal, I believe.
Well, I'm thinking of like the Andy Warhol things. What do you think of them? They're very commercial, obviously, some of his paintings. And he became, you know, a commercial success. It's kind of hard to do that just doing portraits, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, Andy Warhol was very driven by by pattern.
Okay.
And I love his work because of that. Again, like Wyeth, it's pattern in the overall image.
Explain to me what patterns are. Here, I'm going to hold your piece up right here. What is a what pattern do you see? Is it the pattern right here?
No, you have to blur your eyes and look at the entire image. This is a pattern of grays. These are the blacks, and there's textures in this gray, there's textures in this black. The texture of the rungs of the chair with the pigtails, it forms an overall pattern. So
Okay.
you have white and medium values and then blacks or darks. That's a pattern. That may not be as good an example of pattern as some of my other ones here. Probably the most, the one with the most pattern would be this one up here. A very interesting pattern.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Well, thank you very much, Frank, for showing us that. It was, I understand now what you mean by patterns. Thank you.
You better get yourself ready. Is the seatbelt on your couch fastened tight? Do you have a file handy for chewed off fingernails? Make sure you do, and hang on tight, because the fat man cometh. There are other cop shows, others that want your attention, but nothing will command your attention like the amazingly horrendous things you'll see people heartlessly do on Fat TV. The men and women of Fugitive Apprehension TV.
I'm David Custer, and I'm really excited about our new show, Let's Take a Walk. We are going to hit the streets in your community, and we're going to check in with local businesses and show you what's cool and unique and why you should stop into their stores. We're going to meet great business owners, we're going to eat great food, we're going to do great things. So tune in to our show, Let's Take a Walk, because I promise it'll be a good time.
we're back, and we'd like to talk here with Clay. He's another portrait artist. So Clay, tell us about yourself.
My name is Clay Dodson, and I have been painting for roughly 10 years. I did take a course at Arts and Crafts, which is now known as the Creative Center in downtown Detroit. I went for about 6 months at night. And I started to draw when I was 5 years old. And I could draw quite well. And I like drawing the best. When you get into painting, is entirely different concept than drawing. It is, in a way, more difficult. But then again, if you're doing with a pencil, it's with a point, it's a whole different analogy of the arts. I consider the arts drawing, painting, and sculpting. And then photography comes in there, you know, but if I go to an art show, that's what I would like to see, sculptures and drawings and paintings.
Well, I think drawings have become more into their own now, especially since Art Prize, the winning artists were both pencil drawings.
Well, yeah, that is true, and that they did some phenomenal work there. But I like painting portraits, and like Frank mentioned, many different styles that he looks for, or different things he looks for when he is painting. I do not, because I don't know what to look for. I just start painting, and hopefully it will come out the way I want, which a lot of times it doesn't. And people are under the misconception that when you paint, when we have models come in, and when the model starts looking around at the group's paintings, they're all different. We don't paint the same. Every painting is different. I like painting in oils, and I try to start out like the old masters did, and that was by doing a drawing with shadows first, and then going in and applying the paints. I love the old masters, Peter Paul Rubens, Rembrandt, and for some reason, and not just because this man cut off his ear, but I like Van Gogh. I love the application of his paints. It's just great. I don't know, and you have to see the original paintings to really get the full effect. But I don't paint probably as much as I should, but I like getting the expression, if I can, in the face, and sometimes you'll get it and sometimes you won't. Sometimes the painting will come out, other times, you know, it doesn't seem to be working for you. But I enjoy painting with the group here. They're a very, very friendly group. And I paint with oils. There is acrylics you can use, but I like to paint with oil.
Well, you've got a picture here. Let's talk about this one.
This painting that I did here, I tried to do it with very, very thin oil, and almost like I wanted to use it as a watercolor effect, because I was sort of influenced by watercolor by this woman sitting to my left, Diane Benoit, and she's just wonderful with watercolor and oil. So I thinned the paint down, and I think I might have sketched that with pencil first a little bit, and then you go in and you apply your paint and your darks, and you have to, I have been learning to use different colors rather than just like blacks and darks. You have to come up and find with greens and blues and reds and oranges, which I was really not aware of when I first started painting. and I
Well,
enjoy
it's-
it very much.
It's a great piece. You can see the different colors you used in there. And I know this is a question that you probably get asked a lot, but I'm going to ask it anyway again. How long did it take you to do this piece?
I think that we did this piece in 3 hours. Now, some take a lot longer. There's one that another thing that I've been doing is I've been copying the old masters. And there's one up on the wall, which was done by Peter Paul Rubens, behind me that I was copying.
That one right there.
And these artists back then were classic. That's the way they did it back then. I really take my hat off to the old masters, and I love their work. And at this point, I am at. That's about it for me. Pretty well.
Well, back to the scene. I know that because there was not photography, and I think nudes at that time were considered a little different than we picture nudes now. And obviously paintings told a story at that time, and a lot of the stories were from either Greek mythology or the Bible or whatever. We don't do that so much anymore, but at that time that was a popular way to paint, and it gave the artist a chance to show off his skills as far as the human body goes. So it was a different concept at the time, and to incorporate a horse and a bunch of different figures is pretty difficult. So thank you, Clay.
Okay, thank you.
We're back, and our next artist is Diane Jamie Field Benoit, and she's been painting for quite a while, and she also has been with the group for quite a while. So, Diane, you're up.
Okay. Well, my name is Diane Benoit Jamie Field, and I've painted under the name Benoit because that's my real name. So I've been using Benoit since I started painting, and I've been painting probably since I was 3 years old. My mom was an artist, and she always encouraged me to do watercolor. So that's at 3 years old, I was doing watercolor. And over the years, I just kept painting. And then eventually I went to Center for Creative Studies, which was the art school of the Society of Arts and Crafts. And I graduated from there. And I spent, probably 20 years in advertising and retail advertising. And I did private labeling and catalogs and things like that. And then I retired. And after doing that for about 20 years, I retired, and now I'm just a full-time artist, and I can do and paint what I want, finally. So I enjoy traveling, so I go all over Europe and Mexico, and I like to paint the interesting buildings and the architecture in other countries. So I do a lot of that, and the people, different interesting people, and that's kind of what I've been doing now, is a lot of just traveling. I paint every Monday night, and then I also have a painting class that I teach on Wednesday mornings, and I've been doing that for at least 20 years. And I really enjoy doing it. I love working with different people and helping them to bring out their talent and to be the best that they can be, And so that's pretty much my story. I have a painting here I went to the Renaissance Festival this year. I go every year or so, and I enjoy the people in their Renaissance costumes, and I like to portray that and show what they do and how they look. And so I did like a series of these paintings, and then also I enjoy working in series. I went to the Amalfi Coast of Italy, and I did a series of that. I went to Barcelona, and I did a series of paintings there. And I love traveling and just showing people what other countries are like now and what the people are like. And that's pretty much it. Oh, my advice to young people is that I think the most important thing for an artist is to have passion. If you don't have passion about your art, you'll never be good at it. So the first thing you have to have is passion. And if you don't enjoy it, find something else to do.
When you paint, is there one more feature that really you want to capture more, or it's very important, like the eyes or the lips, or, I mean, do you zero in on one thing that you want to just get exactly like the way you see it?
No, I just want to capture the feeling of the person, not necessarily an exact likeness, but just kind of a how that person looks naturally.
Okay.
Sort of, I really like the work of Singer Sargent because it looks natural. It doesn't look photographed. When you look, it just has a natural feeling about it. And that's sort of what I like.
Okay. Well, these are your portraits behind you here.
Right.
And you can see how loose they are. These are all watercolors.
The two up there, yes,
Yep.
they're both watercolor. Now, I work both in oils and watercolor.
Okay.
And I enjoy both, so I switch back and forth, and I find that kind of exciting because you keep seeing things differently and you work differently. But the one on the right was a Monday night model, and Fiona, no, I remember, Fania was her name, and she was a seamstress, very interesting person, very dynamic, and that's kind of what I wanted to capture. And
She has a presence, a real presence.
A real
yes.
presence about her, very interesting. And the man on the left was I worked with photographs, and he was a beggar on the street. And I just wanted to have him portrayed the way he was. That was in San Miguel in Mexico. And he was sort of an interesting character. Now, I work from photographs, but that doesn't mean I copy a photograph. What you have to do is, that's just your beginning. You have to design your piece, design your painting with, use color, design, and it just is a little more involved than copying something. That's why we're artists, is because we want to interpret something our own way. And that's what I try to do all the time, just give it my own way of seeing things. And I like to show the beauty in everything. And I want people to also see the beauty in what's around us and the people that we have contacts with. And it's just, being an artist is a great experience. And I've met a lot of great artists. I made a lot of good friends. And I guess it's a long journey.
Well, it's still continuing, I'm
Yes, that's
sure,
right, until
yeah.
I die. I don't think
Yeah.
I'll ever stop
Yeah.
painting. No.
Another point I'd like to bring up is when people look at paintings, they expect to see it to look just like a photograph, and that's so far from the truth. It's not to be looked like a photograph. It's got the strokes and the passion
It's the
and
artist's
the colors,
interpretation.
and this is what I was trying to portray. That and everybody, inevitably, that doesn't know anything about art will look at a portrait and say, well, that doesn't look like her. It should look like a portrait or a photograph. So anyway, I think that's an interesting aspect.
Well, I
And,
think one of the highest compliments that a beginning artist gets is like, wow, it looks so real. It just looks like a photograph.
Yeah.
And you know, and then I think you go beyond that point and start interpreting things and interpreting how you see them and how you want to share that vision with someone else. And I think if you can get that across, I think it's good art, it's creative.
Oh, my other point was I think it's great if people can buy original art instead of buying prints or posters or things like that. And I know myself, I try to keep my paintings priced so the average person can actually afford a painting and have something on their walls that they can enjoy. And also they could even pass it on to their children, because anything that's original is worth something. I know, because I watched the Antique Roadshow. And I see a lot of artwork on there, you know, done by not necessarily famous artists,
No.
but the work is still worth a bit of money. So I'm telling you all, you should go out and buy original art.
All right.
Yeah, I agree that the point that you made before, that art seems to be trending more toward photographs. I mean, there's less and less interest in the artist's interpretation and in the textural use of the brush. I mean, it just seems that art is more and more slick and photographic. And
Well, I think more people can participate with a camera. You know, I think and you can take hundreds of pictures where, you know, to do hundreds of paintings or drawings is a little more difficult. Not that photography is easy, but it's more accessible, I think, to the average man. So I think, you know, that is one of the reasons why I think it's become so popular.
Another thing is, when you paint from life, and that means a model that's in front of you, and when you paint from a photograph, it's entirely different. I have a tendency, I like them both, but I sort of have a tendency to like to work from the photo. Number one, the photo doesn't move. When you're painting a model, she's going to move. It can't be helped. But you get so many different values in perspectives of the face, the nose, whereas with a photograph, it's two-dimension, no matter what you do. So I sort of like, I'm getting used to, because of this group, getting used to painting from a model, but it is entirely different. There are people that if you give them a model to paint from, they can't do it. This is what I heard from one of my instructors. And Diane to the left of me is one of my instructors, but some people can paint from a photograph. They have to have a photo. They cannot paint from life. This is what I've heard.
I like to paint from the model and not from the photograph, because I tend to interpret what I see and exaggerate the foreshortening. I tend to bring the hands and the feet closer together. I push the face further back. I exaggerate the gesture in the torso. I like that because it makes a much more interesting overall pattern again.
Well, again, yeah, because that way you make it personable or personal, your interpretation of it. And I thank you all for coming here. And do you have one more?
Yes, I have one more. The reason you want to work from life is you see a lot more. In a photograph, it flattens everything. Your darks become black holes, and there's no color in it. So if you work from life, you see all the colors. And also in photographs, when you're doing people, the colors aren't normally the colors that are in that person's face.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for being here.